Thank you for tuning in to 10 Things to Know Before Writing Your Resume. My name is Laura Warner, and I am the Assistant Director of Workforce and Employment Services at Jefferson College. At the end of this presentation, there is a link that will give you more information about resume writing and other job search activities. So let's get started. An overview of what you should gain from the presentation today is that resume writing is one of the most important things that you can do for your job search. Your resume is a tool to help you get a job and hopefully will propel you into the next phase of the hiring process, which is an interview. Now, the first tip is to write your resume for the job. Now, what I mean by that is many times people will write their resume and then send it to all of the employers, all of the jobs that they want to apply for. Instead, you should look at each job individually and make sure that that individual resume meets the skills and qualifications and experiences that the employer is asking for. The benefits to doing this is that the employer can find your skills and experience that they need on your resume right away, and it gives the resume some focus as well. Some challenges to writing your resume for the job is that it's kind of rewriting or revising your resume each time you apply for a job, which can be a little bit more time consuming. But I think the extra time is worth it because with employers seeing what they want more readily, you're more likely to get a call back for an interview. So definitely want to, if anything you take away from this, this is one of the most important tips that I have to give. Second, what's in the name? So your resume is essentially a sales document and you are the product. So when you are typing your resume, when you're creating your resume, you want to make sure your name is big and bold and the first thing your eye notices when it looks at the page. So some resume templates might ask you to put the information above your name, but really your name needs to be at the top of the page and the first thing anyone sees. Next is know yourself. This, writing your resume, provides you an opportunity to do a lot of self-reflection. And this self-reflection is really important so that you can really know the skills and experience that you have and then do the job of how they connect to the job that you're applying for. The drawback to this is that sometimes it's really hard to identify what skills and experiences are the most important and what you've gained from different experiences. So this is why I really recommend that if you're struggling with this point, you should come and see a professional at Workforce and Employment Services, and we can help you walk through this process and identify some of those skills and experiences if you're struggling. Next is skills. Really, let's break down what skills are. So skills are things, it might be tasks, it might be sets of knowledge, and these are things that you need to know how to do or know about a job to perform it well. Now, the neat thing about skills and adding like a specific skills section to your resume is that it allows you to pull from either job experiences, volunteer work, education experiences. Skills allowed you to pull from a lot of different areas to focus on what's most important to that employer. Now, when trying to determine what is most important for an employer to know about, you're going to want to look at job descriptions. A job description is usually a really clear layout of what they're looking for that particular job. In addition, some programs have created guides to assist students in identifying what skills that they gain from each class within their program. And so if you're wanting to know if your program has one of those, please reach out to me and I can let you know about that. Next up is education. Now, education is a really important part of your resume, especially if you're a current student. For recent grads, your education needs to be near the top of the page, near the top of the resume. That's because your education is relevant and it's what you're doing right now. Now, as you progress in your career, your education section might go further down on your resume, but that's going to be something that transitions over time. Now, when you're doing your education section, you're going to want to include your degree, so an Associate of Applied Science, Associate of Arts, a certificate, what it is that you're obtaining from the college, the program. So it may be automotive technology. It might be registered nursing. The institution attended. So for most of the students I work with, that's going to be Jefferson College, the city and state where the institution is located, so Hillsborough, Missouri, and the anticipated date of graduation. And we usually display that by month and year. So for example, May of 2020. Now, if you are a Jefferson College student, in most cases, I will recommend that you don't need to include your high school diploma because in order to get into the college, you have to have your diploma or equivalent, and that there's sometimes more important information to include besides that. If you have any additional training or education besides your Jefferson College degree, this is the section that you would want to include that information in. And you'll want to have the same format that you used to talk about your Jefferson College degree. Number 6 is transferable skills. Now, this is a really important thing that a lot of people don't necessarily think about. So transferable skills are skills that you gain from one area of your life or experience, and they're applicable to a lot of other areas. So even if you have a job that's not related to your education, you can tap into one of those transferable skills and showcase how you have that knowledge. So for one example of that is customer service. So a lot of students I work with will have experience in food service or retail, and that is such a great spot to gain your customer service skills. So when you're talking about your experience, think about what those transferable skills may be and how they might benefit you in your current or future jobs. Number 7, experience. Now, experience, when I say that, I mean your work history. What have you done employment-wise? So when you're sharing what your experience is, you want to include your job title, the employer you work for or have worked for, the city and state of employment, and the dates of employment using the month and year. When we're writing about our experience, we want to put it in reverse chronological order. So that's going to start with your most recent job and work your way back. Now, after we have the baseline information about your employment history, your employment, we want to add some bullets that talk about what you did in that job. Now, with bullets, you want to avoid just listing a list of tasks of what you've done. You want to really focus on your accomplishments. What did you do in that position that you're proud of or that really stood out from your peers? Were you recognized for anything? So, were you Employee of the Month? Did you have the top sales? Different things like that for recognition. Or were you promoted? Did you start at one position and then you were bumped up to another position? Other bullets you could talk about might be learning a new program, transitioning to a new system, training other people. So there's lots of things that you can talk about in your experience that are going to be really important for people to know. Another point about experience is that if you are applying to a job where you have related experience, you always want to include that first. And so what you can do is sometimes take your experience and divide it into 2 sections instead of one. One being related experience, where you share that experiences that is related to your education or your field, and the other one more of a work history, where you're still going to share that, but maybe less bullets. And it allows the focus to be on the related job. Now, number 8, don't forget the extras. Now, while I focus a lot on your education and your skills and your employment that are related to the job, there are other things that you might have done that you would want to highlight on your resume by either including them in categories or including them in other sections of your resume. So volunteer work is one thing that is really important to include. And you're going to want to structure a volunteer work section similarly to how you would structure your experience section. Professional development. So if you've attended workshops or trainings or conferences within your field, that's something that you want to highlight on your resume. If you are a member of clubs and organizations within or even without of your field, that is something that you want to highlight as well. If you are fluent in any other language, you would want to note that on your resume. And then this is also a time to think about any other notable achievements. So that might be aware of a program or technology that would be really relevant to your field. That's something you'd want to highlight on your resume. Number 9, things to exclude or avoid. Now, I usually have a lot of tips of what to do, what not to do, but just to focus on a few of them. When you are writing your resume, you want to keep a professional focus. You don't want to include unrelated information or personal information on your resume. So, things that you might want to avoid saying your age, how many pets or kids that you have, or personal interests or hobbies. Those are things that aren't necessarily appropriate for your resume. The other tip I have is to avoid resume templates. While templates are really easy the first time you use them, when you start using or going in to edit them, they're often very difficult to edit and rearrange. So then you spend a lot more time in trying to get the formatting right than you do on the content. And I want you to be able to focus more on the content. So my suggestion is if you look at a resume template and you really like it, just recreate it in a Word or a Google Doc and use it that way. A last bit of advice of what to do on your resume is to make sure to not use first person on your resume. Exclude the I, the me, the my wording. It makes your writing more difficult to get to the point, and it's much more appropriate to use first person for a cover letter. The other bit I would add onto this is that when you're talking about your experience and adding bullets, make sure to use verbs to explain those. So action words like managed, facilitated, directed, those are going to be really powerful words that are going to capture people's attention. And finally, the 10th thing is references. So references are people that you're going to ask to speak with employers about your work-related skills and abilities. So it might not seem like much, but references can make or break someone's application. So when you are choosing your references, you want to choose carefully and make sure you're going to choose someone who's going to give you a positive reference. I always recommend to ask someone to serve as a reference for you and provide them a copy of your resume so that they can know what skills and experience you have gained since they've last interacted with you. Examples of who you could use as a reference is a supervisor, a coworker, a mentor, or some other individuals who have seen you in a work-related environment. You do not need to list the references directly on your resume. Rather, you can create a separate page that lists your references, and the typical number is to have 3 professional references unless otherwise indicated by your employer. And so when you do that separate page of your references, make sure your name and contact information is also included on that page. So those are the 10 things that you should know before writing your resume. You may contact me at my email address listed on the presentation and check out our other resources at our job resources page on the Employment Services website. And as always, if you need more help or want some individualized attention, contact us for a resume review. Thank you.